Hey guys, I hope everybody's doing well today. Today we're going to look at complex trauma part 2. In complex trauma part 1, I went over many different symptoms of complex trauma, and you can watch that one if you want. I recently got a comment on that video that gave me the idea to do this video, and then I remembered that I had originally planned to do part 1 as part 1 and part 2, and I thought, well, that's going to be way too long. So I waited and just did part 1, and the comment reminded me to do this. So breaking it up into part 1 and part 2, I think is the best idea. So thank you for your comment, and we're going to do this today. So I'm just going to go over review some of the symptoms, and then I'm going to tell you personally, for me, what happened in my life and about at what age it was that caused me to have whichever symptom I'm going over. And just to let you know, I am remembering a lot more about my past, my history, but I haven't remembered everything. So what I share may be just part of the reason. It may not be the whole reason. But as more things surface, I will try to kind of keep up on this with you. All right, so I got all kind of stuff flying through my head. But anyway, I'm trying to focus on this. There's so much that goes with this that I'm trying to give just enough and not go down a rabbit hole. So Holy Spirit will just have to lead me because it's too much for me to really mentally deal with. Before we started with the symptom of detachment, and that's simply feeling like you are detached from your circumstances, from the people in your life, from whatever's going on, and you're detached from yourself. A lot of times, when you have been through complex trauma, you're not really fully in your own body. You don't identify with being yourself because being yourself has been too painful, so you kind of went somewhere else. And also with my temperament being INFJ, we do that anyway. Kind of float in and out of ourselves, and so that can be a real problem when you have both. So detachment, I remember not bonding with my mom, and that was the first, I think, stage of detachment because I had nothing to hold on to, it felt like. And just to let you know, I came from a very nice family. My parents are good citizens. They are in good standing. They are generous, kind people. They have many friends. They do a lot of wonderful things. But just in our family, when I was little, these things happened, and this was the result. I am not blaming anyone for anything that happened. I have been through all of the little girl who was violated, purging her emotions and blaming and all of the justifications that she had to have. And I've been through all the forgiveness and I've been through all of that stuff. So I'm not stuck there. If you feel that you are stuck in unforgiveness or blaming, try to do work to get past that because it will accelerate your healing. All right. So the detachment was, I think, primarily started from not bonding. And my mom, of course, was traumatized when she was a little girl. And so the part of her that was empathic and that was caring died when she was a little girl. So by the time I was born to her, what was left was severe criticism. She would never compliment you or encourage you or nurture you. She would always tell you what's wrong. And so even my dad says that. And so that's just where she was then. And she's grown some in her old age, and she's softened some. But anyway, that's where it started with me, is not really bonding with my mom. I had to be left a lot when I was little, and there's a long story behind that, but I'm trying to keep this in a reasonable length. Here's a picture of me when I was 6 years old, and I think I was having a whole lot of trouble then because my favorite song was by the Carpenters. And it was the song that they sing called Goodbye to Love. That was my favorite song. And it was a secret favorite song. I never told anybody because when I heard of all the other songs I heard on the radio, when I heard that song, I thought that those people who wrote that song and they were singing that song knew me and that they had written that song about me. And it made me very self-conscious when I heard it, because I was 6 or 7 years old and I didn't realize what was going on. But that song really pushed buttons with me, and I felt, just completely bonded with that song, because it was like they knew my life and they were writing about my life. So that was freaky. But the detachment is something we do when we haven't bonded. We detach when we are around people who bring pain to us. We detach from ourselves when we haven't bonded, and when every time we try to speak up for a need or assert our self, the self that we know until that time, but every time we do, it's either rejected, squashed, or dismissed. In other words, at some level, it is very painful every time you try to speak up or express yourself, so you stop doing that. If every time you go to an electric fence and you're a cow, you hit it once and you don't go back. Well, we want that connection and bonding so badly, we keep going back and we get zapped over and over again, and then over time, we stop doing that. So, and then the isolation came, I think, from not bonding, and from being INFJ and just feeling like a misfit and not knowing, just what was going on, and just feeling like a total someone who didn't fit in anywhere. And isolation also came from, I was sent to my room a lot as a little girl from age probably 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I was hyper. I had ADHD, and I was a little hyper, and my parents didn't know what to do with me. They didn't know what to do with that back then. And so they thought that punishing me, sending me to my room till I calmed down, would cause me to stop being hyper. But that message sent to me, we don't like you, we're rejecting you, go away. And so I couldn't turn it off. And it made me upset and angry because I felt rejected as a child. And so that made me kind of willful and not want to obey. And so it was kind of a vicious cycle. And that's where isolation came in, because I spent so many hours and probably days in my room by myself. And so a lot of my brain developed in isolation. And so I remember I was just looking out the window, and I knew God was there. And I knew that he knew me, but I knew that I didn't know him. But I knew that he knew what he was doing at some level. That gave me a little bit of comfort during all those years. My lack of trust. Well, one of my problems is being an empath and INFJ and a highly sensitive person is I trust people very much. My DNA is extremely trusting, even too trusting. But the part of me that has been traumatized does not trust and doesn't want to trust. So I've had to try to, in my healing, bring those two together to kind of have a happy medium and let myself grow as my sense of self, with both of those coming to meet in the middle, having caution and common sense and listening to my gut, and also being compassionate and merciful, and because I'm just a very empathic person. So I do have a lot of trust, and then there's another part of me that has not much trust at all. Flashbacks, I do have, and even one example recently is I go to the chiropractor once a week, and then every other week I go to get a massage, and that is helping me to heal. So, but I was going to the chiropractor the other day, and I was feeling this anxiety in my body. I just felt it. I couldn't deny it. I couldn't snap out of it. I couldn't do anything. It was just there. And I didn't know what it was. And I just finally said, Lord, why am I anxious? I'm just going to this kind man who was helping me heal. He's very gentle. And the Lord reminded me with this image in my brain of me when I was 5, 6, 7, 8, maybe 9, going to the doctor. I was remembering that I was sick a lot when I was a little girl, and I basically every winter I would get strep throat, sometimes 2 times, and most of those times I would have to go to the doctor to get a swab to see if it was strep. And If it was strep, we would be in the waiting room and the nurse would come back in. And when she said the word injection, I knew what was going to happen. And I started to freak out because in my mind, there was no way that they were going to give me that injection. Not going to happen. So as a result, they had to bring in a team of adults to hold me down on the table to get the injection in my hip. And then I was released. So I was held down a lot as a child, getting these injections from being sick all the time. And then we would go and my mom would pay the bill, and then we would go out into, out the door into the parking lot to go to our car. And the minute I stepped off the sidewalk onto the parking lot, I would throw up all over the parking lot. And that was the trauma trying to come out of me. I also remember flashbacks of being little kid, maybe 2 or 3, and being buried in the sand. And I wasn't able to get out. They wouldn't let me out, and it flipped me out. It totally traumatized me, and I was crying. My parents did that because they thought it would be fun, and because back in the 50s, that's what they did to have fun. They buried each other in the sand, and they thought that that would be a good thing. And they also, back in the 50s, were whoever could be the most sarcastic at that time in their lives was the coolest. You were the coolest. You were the top dog if you could be the most sarcastic. And I don't think they realized that those types of activities that they did back then were not appropriate with little children or children at all. Also, there was another memory that came back a few years ago, and I was very young, 2 or 3, and whenever something was wrong with me, they would take me to the doctor. And I always kind of felt like I was handled like a sack of potatoes, and that was hard for me. But I remember going to this doctor's office, and they handed me to this big doctor. He was a very large man, and they just gave me to him, and he took me into some room. And for some reason, he had to check something in my rectum, and he had to feel for something maybe in my intestines, but he had to go through the rectum to do it. And I remember lying there, and he put his finger in my rectum just very suddenly, and it freaked me out. I had never obviously had that done before, and that was not anything I was used to. And so I became hysterical. I was crying, and it freaked me out. And the Lord showed me and told me that as far as he's concerned, and as far as the little girl's concerned, that was rape. That was a digital rape for that little girl. And you wouldn't think of it that way. From the doctor's perspective, he was just doing his job, But from the little girl's perspective, as far as the Lord was concerned, that's what it was for me. And that's how he defines that incident for me to validate what happened. Okay? And then insomnia is something that I have had, and I do take a sleeping pill now. It's very important to get sleep for your brain if it's been traumatized, because sleeping is one of the main ways that it recovers, and that's when your brain cleans out all the yucky stuff in the brain and kind of helps it to heal along. I am less jumpy than I've used to be. My central nervous system has calmed down through many of the healing modalities I've done, and we're going to talk about those over here in a minute. But especially when I had 4 kids and a husband that was difficult, I was interrupted a lot. And as I grew up, when I was growing up, I was in my room by myself so much of my life. I had no interruptions ever. I was in my own world. I was left alone, and I just did whatever in my own little INFJ mind. See, that entertained me 100%. And so, but it was traumatic for me to come to a family with 4 daughters and a husband that was difficult because I got interruptions a lot. And that was part of the damage that happened to my brain, is the interruptions. They weren't just tap, tap, mom. It was, kind of a mini crisis. And the difficulties that my husband presented to me at the time, those were definitely times where I had to jump up and intervene and deal with him. And so that was very traumatic for me. And those things triggered and helped me to remember all the reasons I used to be jumpy. back then. Amnesia is when you can't remember, and a lot of my life has been my subconscious mind saying, I'm not going to remember that because I don't want to remember it. And so it wasn't like from an accident where you're in a car accident and you have an impact, a one-time impact brain injury, and you can't remember. This is a psychological defense mechanism that God has given us in our brain that helps us to not remember so that we can function in the moment. And then over time, those memories are disclosed or revealed when they're ready to be healed. You can get older and have kind of a calmer space in your life, and that may be a time the Lord would want to reveal and heal some memories. Dissociation is when you're all of you is just dissociated. Your mind, your feelings, your plans, your body, the symptoms you're having, your memories, they're all over the place, and they're very difficult. It's very difficult to function in that. You can feel like you're crazy, like you're literally insane. You depersonalize yourself. You don't see yourself as a person. You've separated and detached from yourself, and you've depersonalized yourself because you've been treated in a way that made you feel that you were not human. It's kind of like dehumanizing yourself. You've depersonalized yourself. And derealization is also a symptom, a subsymptom of dissociation, because you can feel like you're always in a dream. And I am coming out of that some, but I still sometimes feel like I'm just in a dream and I can never get to reality. Alcohol, food, sex, and self-medication is something that we do. We run to things to make the pain less because it hurts so bad. And you're not thinking about, wow, I could get addicted to this drug and it'll make me worse. You don't care about that. You don't even have that thought in your mind. You just want whatever it is to ease the pain, to ease the trauma in the moment, just for a bit, just to feel better. So I used to drink a lot of alcohol when I was a teenager, and that was, me trying to drown away the trauma. Food, I bonded up here when I was talking about not bonding. Instead of bonding with my mom, I bonded with sugar, with music, with animals, and with my imagination, I guess. Those are the things I bonded with. And I never got to bond with my dad, so I bonded with the music that he liked and his guitar. Sex is something we can want a lot of if we haven't bonded, and if we have sexualized our emotions, which can happen in all this and in other ways. But when you sexualize your emotions immediately go to sex. They don't want to be dealt with, so they jump and hide under the category of sex. And so whenever you feel something, you want to exercise that emotion in the expression of sexuality. And then self-medication, we all can do this. I still self-medicate, and I have since I was 5 years old. I remember going to a restaurant with my parents, and I was 5 years old, and I ordered this chocolate dessert. And after about the third bite, something said to me, you are going to need this every day for the rest of your life. And absolutely have. I eat a lot of dark chocolate, very dark chocolate, and it just makes my brain happy. And that's the one thing that I get the green light on from the Lord. I can have as much of that as I want. I used to eat 2 whole bars a day. Now I eat about a half a bar a day. Anyway, there's hypervigilance. We can be like a fireman on crack or a policeman on crack. We're always ready to, dive on the bomb or get out of the building or rescue people. We see right away when somebody drops something, or if there's a tag sticking out of somebody's shirt, just little things that don't matter, but we're very in tune with all of these things. And I'm always aware when I'm sitting in large groups of people of people's energy and of anybody that could be out of line and just all kinds of spiritual things. So, I have kind of that gift anyway, but this makes it ridiculous. And I've calmed down a lot over the years, but that's still in me. Toxic guilt and shame we talked about in the part 1. And the guilt that you feel over the things that have happened to you is incredibly deep. And the shame is absolutely suffocating. Toxic relationships. Your brain was formed in toxic relationships, so you're subconsciously attracted to relationships that can be unhealthy. And so you have to work at what in you is attracted to unhealthy people, and you've got to repair that so that your attraction goes toward the healthy people over time. Depression, anxiety, and panic is very common in complex trauma. Your brain is too low, too high, and wanting to escape. Depression is just your brain is too suppressed. Anxiety is your brain is too amped up. It's in fear. It doesn't know what to do, and it's trying to escape. And depression can also be losses that you've had over and over and over again. It can also be from a lack of grieving. If you haven't grieved your losses, you can feel depressed. Okay, grieving is very important to get past this. Having no confidence and no motivation. Of course, you're not going to have confidence and motivation if you can hardly function. And then all of the things that have happened to you inside, the lies on top of lies on top of lies that you've internalized on top of all that other stuff, feeds the lack of confidence and lack of motivation. Second guessing yourself. We do this because we have been, every time we've tried to express ourselves, we experience some kind of rejection or pain. And so eventually we stop expressing ourselves. And then when we even want to express ourselves or make a decision on our own, we second guess that because we've divided ourselves on the inside and we've sided with those who intentionally or unintentionally kept shutting us down. You can't speak up for yourself because if you've never been heard by anyone, then there's no connection of positive outcome for you to speak up for yourself. If every time you try to speak up for yourself, you're shut down, dismissed, you experience some kind of terrible pain, then you end up agreeing with, in your mind, the people who would not hear you and who dismissed you, and you dismiss yourself and you won't hear yourself. And that feeds the dissociation, the detachment, the depersonalization, all of that. It all connects. Wanting to escape is wanting to escape from the environment that you're in, but you don't know how. I do remember when I was around this age, maybe a year earlier than this, I did try to run away. I was 6 years old, and I remember, I don't know what happened, but it was a series of things, and I just said, that's it. I can't live with these people. I can't do that. I'm not doing this. And I remember going in my little closet, and there was a hat box that my grandmother gave me. It was those round ones that used to carry a hat in it. She gave it to me, and I unzipped it, and I put some pajamas and a little toothbrush and I don't know what, and I zipped it back up, and I peeked out of my room, and no one was around. And I went to the front door, and I quietly opened it, and I snuck out the front door and closed it, and I went down the steps, and I went to the driveway, stepped on that driveway, and I started walking down the driveway almost to the street. Then I realized I don't have anywhere to go, and I started crying, and I couldn't believe I had to turn around and go back in. I couldn't believe it, but I did, and that was horrible. What else? You feel trapped in your circumstances. You feel trapped. You feel trapped in your body. You feel trapped in making the same decisions that you're making, even though you don't know yet that you can change your decisions. Once you start to get healing, you will understand that you have a lot more freedom than you ever believed you did. Being invisible, the being trapped, I remember that feeling, being trapped in a family that didn't understand me. Being punished for the way I was, and I didn't know that. I thought I was bad, and I had a lot of shame for feeling that I was bad and wrong and defective because I was being punished a lot because I had ADHD and because I didn't bond with my parents. There was nothing there's no reason to want to obey because there was no bond and there was no love. And trapped by all the doctor experiences and trapped in just being in schools that I didn't like. I felt like I was in a prison when I was in school. I was so bored and I was always looking out the window and doodling. Oh God, it was so hard for me. What else? Trapped. I also felt trapped in having to perform. I remember feeling very trapped in that I was locked in a prison. Like I got up on the stage and started dancing and that I was never allowed to get off. I just had to keep performing and performing. And the Lord had to set me free from that whole cage. And then being invisible, when you're never heard and you feel like you're never seen except to be punished or rejected or abandoned, you feel invisible, but the part of you that feels visible, that is attached to the abandonment, rejection, and punishment, doesn't want to see itself. So you become invisible to yourself and you feel invisible to other people. Your needs have not been met or heard. Your feelings have not been heard or appreciated or understood. And yourself has been invisible. And so because of the strong theme of that invisibility in my life, the Lord gave me this gift. And the gift was a nightmare that He gave me. And so let me explain this. I woke up one morning, this was pretty recently, about a year ago or two, and I woke up, I had this horrible dream. And so the dream was, I was walking along, and all of a sudden I saw this woman. She was very destitute. She was dirty. She had she had been beat up on her face. She had marks where she had been hit. Her clothes were torn. She had this little baby with her. The baby was skin and bones, and the baby had black eye and was looked abused and hardly had any hair. And this mother was carrying this baby kind of not very affectionately, and they were just walking along. And I just went into full panic mode. And I just thought, I've got to save this baby and I've got to help this woman. What do? I can't call the police because they haven't done anything. And I don't see, no one, they have to catch them in the act, right? And so I just felt like there was this horrible situation in front of me, but I couldn't do anything about it. And I also felt like nobody would believe me that I had seen it and that it was real. And it just went on and on. And it was one of those nightmares where you wake up, and I don't really have nightmares anymore ever, but this was different. This was a gift. And this happened right before I woke up. And I woke up and I was just, out of breath, and I was freaked out. I kept saying, I've got to save that baby. I've got to save that baby. And then it occurred to me that the Lord was right there, and He was illuminating the fact that He showed me that image because that was me and my mother. And I just started bawling. It was horrible, but it was a validation of everything that I have been through, and that yes, what I experienced was real, and it's very real, and that the Lord saw it and He understands, and in His economy, I have every right and every reason to say what I'm saying. My reality is real, is what He was telling me. Even though we wore the finest clothing man can make, and we ate the finest food money can buy, and we did the most wonderful trips, and we did all these things, inside it was a different story. And this little invisible girl, her emotions need a voice. He told me that over and over again. Your emotions need a voice. He would come to me in the middle of the night, stand at the foot of my bed, the white robe with the hood, and he would point to me right here and say, your emotions need a voice. Your emotions need a voice. And then when he pointed, it's like this light, this focus went on the biggest part of me that was invisible. And he was saying, it's time for this to be heard. And that really accelerated my healing when he said that to me, because no one else had ever said that to me. I had been to one or two therapists who had, said that, but they were people just like all the other people. And so when they said it, I believed that they were trying to help, but there was still that gulf between me and other people through all of these things. And there was a lot of bullying that went on for 7 years or not continually, but off and on for 7 years from age 5 to age 11. And so anyway, it started when I was on a van when I was 5 years old. And this definitely contributed to detachment, isolation, lack of trust, all of these things. Bullying can do this. Bullying alone can cause complex trauma. And anyway, no one listened to me. No one did anything. And it kind of went on off and on until I was 11. So it was age 5 to 11. And then once I was age 11, it shifted from being boys and men bullying me to a girl. There was a girl that was bullying me, and she was punching on me. And I found out later that she came from an abusive household where her sisters bullied her. So she was taking out her anger and rage on me. And anyway, we were standing in line to go to the lunchroom, and I was beside my best friend, and this bully was punching on me, and I just didn't do anything. I let her hit me over and over again. But then she turned and started to punch on my best friend. Okay, y'all, I don't know what happened, but I just turned into the Hulk. I can't explain it. Something happened in me, and I physically attacked her. And she stopped immediately bullying my friend, and I don't really remember what I did, and no one did anything. The teacher didn't even do anything, but I didn't get in trouble. I just remember she never bullied anybody after that, and I literally don't even remember what I did. But I just know that at that moment I said in my mind, this will not happen. And I must have physically attacked her. And anyway, but that's when the bullying stopped. When I was 11, something clicked in me, and I just said, and it's funny because I would let her beat me up. But when it came to my best friend, I would have died to stop my best friend from being bullied. This is a symptom of complex trauma. Okay. So in all of this, I hope I've given enough personal examples that would be helpful. If y'all want me to do a part 3 and come up with even more examples, I can. There are so many things I could talk about. Teachers that I didn't like. 2 teachers when I was in high school, I could not stand them. They both taught history, and I failed 2 years of history my high school year, I think 10th and 11th grade. I failed because I could not stand the teacher, and I hated the way they taught. They were so boring, and I just couldn't even read the material. So both of those summers I went to summer school in 6 weeks, and I got a good grade. The teacher was normal and, made it fun, and I did really well. So anyway, this is all when you're going through this and your brain is internalizing. Now here I have internalization versus externalization. Your brain is internalizing everything that happens to you. It is internalizing it, and it's saying, oh, this is who I am. Oh, this is who I am. Because a little child's brain doesn't know that there's God Almighty, who's all good and all powerful, and that's where we're supposed to get our identity. And that our parents are supposed to point us to Him to get our identity, to get all the things that we need. And they're supposed to be in agreement with Him to give us those same things: identity, bonding, trust, sense of self, all of those good things. But we don't know that. So we, little children, just go to the people around us and say, oh, I'm being punished a lot. You don't like me. Oh, so that's who I am. I'm going to internalize that. Oh, you beat me up and you don't listen to my needs. Oh, so that's who I am. And we internalize all of these things that are happening to us, and we're doing these building blocks of lies inside of us. Because that's not who we are. That's not how we're supposed to be treated. But we're teaching ourselves this just by the fact that we need to learn. So, but over the years, we internalize all of these things. We think that these experiences define us. We think that these experiences are who we are. We think that these experiences equal and reveal our value. All of those are lies. So, because all of this is internalized in your brain, in your soul, in every part of you, in your muscle memory, in every cell, it's internalized. What we have to do in our healing is externalize all of these things. So when these things happen to you as a child, they're internalized. If you don't externalize them in a healthy way, they are externalized in your relationships to your children. You will repeat down from Adam, every evil thing that's been done to you, you will continue the curse all the way down. So what you want to do is break the curse in the name of Jesus, with the blood of Jesus. Come to Christ and let him sever those ties and let him start a new cycle. You can say, the buck stops with me. This will not be repeated in my life. This has not been repeated in my life because I've done this. And you had that free choice too. I have made many vows as a child. One of the vows I made among many was, I will never, ever be like her. I will never hurt people. I will not be a narcissist. I will not criticize people. I will not tear people down. I will not do all of these things that my mom did. God bless her. She didn't mean to. That was all she knew. And she was not like that to people outside the family. It was only inside the family. And then I will not be whatever my dad did. And I had to renounce those vows in order to be free, but I'm still in agreement with part of the principle of the vow, is that I'd rather suffer and deal with my own issues than to pass on any of these things to somebody else. So that's between you and the Lord, and you can work that out with wherever you are, but you do not have to pass on the curses and the wounding and the trauma that you've been through. You do this through acknowledging the internalization that you've done and externalize what you've internalized. That means if you've been eating poison for your whole life, you need to start throwing it up. Okay? If you've been eating poison, drinking poison your whole life, you need to start throwing it up. You need to get it out in legitimate, healthy, helpful ways. There are many ways to do this. Once you start to externalize the poison that you've been taking in your whole life, at the same time, you will want to change the internalization that you're doing, the things you're feeding on, the things you're bringing into your world, by changing it from poison and toxins to healthy, good stuff for you. So you change the input from toxic to healthy, and all the toxins that are in you, you start to throw them up, so to speak. You can grieve, you can cry, you can journal, you can see a therapist, you can talk, you can join a group and connect and share. You can do cross current, you can do living waters, you can come to any of my classes. We do this some in my classes. So, but the point is that when you're going to heal from all of this, you want to give yourself time. Plenty of time, and always give yourself grace. Go easy on yourself. Why? Because everyone else has been hard on you and ugly toward you. Well, you don't want to be in agreement with them and further the wounding that's in you. You want to agree with God, because he gives you grace and mercy and healing. And the more you agree with him, the faster you're going to move over here into the healing lane. So you're going to purge the bad out of you. The emotions, the memories, the traumas, the feelings, the whatever it is, the unforgiveness, the bitterness, the resentment, the whatever it is, doesn't matter. Just let it out in a way that will be helpful to you. While you're doing that, throwing up the bad, you want to breathe in the good air. Eat the good healthy food. Drink the good clean water. Take in the good relationships. See, you're letting go of the bad, bringing in the good. That's how you start to heal. So another thing is that as you start to do this, purge out the bad and receive in the good, you will start to develop a sense of self. When you start to acknowledge that you are here, if you have breath in you, then you are here and you are meant to be here, and God has put you here, and He has purposefully made you, and He has a good plan for you. Even if the whole world has tried to destroy you, He has a good plan for you. And if you just get in agreement with Him, you will start to have huge changes in your life. But you will start to develop a sense of self when you start to connect with the healthy people and bond with the healthy people and be heard and be seen. And you will also develop a strong sense of self, very strong, when you start to use boundaries. You start to connect with people who use strong boundaries, then you start to use them. And you can really develop a strong sense of self. And you will be bonding with the healthy people, which will strengthen you and help you to go up the ladder in your health. In my own personal life, some personal specific examples that I've done in my healing over all these years are I have detached from toxic people and I have attached to healthy people. In my marriage, I had to leave for a number of months, and that was to push a reset button on the relationship. That's what I was wanting it to do. We could have gotten divorced. It was up to him. I didn't care at that point, but I did detach from him because I was more committed to the Lord and doing what the Lord was leading me to do, which was heal and draw near to Him, than I was to the marriage. I kind of flung the marriage aside and said, Lord, you deal with this. I can't deal with this anymore. If you want it to work, fine. If not, fine. I don't care. I'm just listening to you. So I detached from my husband, who was toxic for me at the time, and he has made a U-turn in many ways. I mean, we still have issues, but it's nowhere like it used to be. And then I've attached to healthy people, a few select people, but mostly to the Lord. He is my main attachment. He really is my main attachment. But so what I've done is I've started out doing TPM. This is Transformational Prayer Ministry. And Dr. Ed Smith is the originator of this, the founder. And this is basically finding the lies in your soul and letting the Lord bring them out and heal them and replace them with truth. Some of the lies that I discovered that I had in my soul were, and from all of the years of this, were I'm helpless, I am worthless, I am powerless, and I must suffer. And so my ministry friend and I, she's now retired, but we did this on each other. She was having some anxiety issues and I was having some issues, and we did this on each other, and we both got out a lot of lies, and that was tremendously helpful. I've also done EMDR therapy, probably 3 or 4 times, sessions of that. That was helpful in my issues with my dad. I've done breathing therapy. I've always had trouble breathing, just like I've been frozen since I was little. And I've had to do breathing therapy to regulate my breathing and to really give myself permission to breathe. That's been really hard for me. I've done Evox therapy, several sessions of that. It's basically this little machine they have, and they hook you up to it, or you put your hand on this mouse. I forget what they do, but anyway, it's a little machine, and you do this computer program, and it senses where you are, and you say these different things, and it reframes your perception of things that have happened to you, and it reframes your perception of yourself. That was helpful. I went to the Amen Clinic. I got the brain scans. They said my brain looked like a Vietnam vet and that I needed help. And I've done all the recommendations that they have given me, and so that was helpful. The scans are expensive if you don't have the funds to do it. So instead of doing this, you can always just go to his website and look at somebody that has trauma brain, and you could think, wow, my brain might look a little bit like that. What does he say to do for trauma brain? And then just go do all the things that he recommends for trauma brain. If you have ADHD, if you have alcoholism, if you have, drugs, or if you had an injury, he has all the images on the website, and you can just go to the list of remedies and the things to do to heal that and do them instead of getting the scans. You don't have to get the scans. You can if you want, but you don't have to. One of the things that helped me the most was brain mapping and biofeedback. This was recommended to me when I was I think I was getting my hormones checked, and I said something about trauma a few times, and they said, oh, well, maybe you need to do this. And anyway, they finally got me to do it, and once I started doing it, I did it a lot because it really helped. They just hook up these little probes to your head, and they basically adjust your brain, like how you on the old TVs, how they had the rabbit ears and the screen was all staticky, and they adjust the antennas and it got clear. That's basically what they're doing inside your head. They're just finding the places that are either too low or too high, and they're just evening them out. It was very helpful. Meditation. I do a lot of meditation all the time because it just feels good. It feels good to focus on one thing and to let everything else go. And it helps me to grow spiritually, and it helps me to trust the Lord more, and it helps to heal my brain, and it helps to calm me down. It helps me to know what to do, to clear through all of the confusion and just go in one path. I do chiropractic one week and massage the next. Those are very helpful to alternate in your healing, especially if touch is one of the love languages that is very big for you and you've never really been touched in your life. You can have major problems if you don't deal with that. And so massage is part of the healing for that, for me. I did read a book called Unlearn Your Pain, and I don't remember how helpful that was, but I do remember that I read it. I forget who the author is. You can Google it. A huge thing for me is purging my soul of the traumas. That has been a huge thing for me, is externalizing the things that have happened, because it all felt like just this big, dark mess on the inside. And when I focus on one thing that hurts, that's hard, that is giving me trouble, and I externalize it, it helps me to see it. Oh, this is what it is. It's on this piece of paper. It's right here. It's contained. It makes sense. It's not mysterious anymore. And I know some things that I can do to help this. That has really helped me to heal, because I felt like I was floating in outer space my whole life, and I wasn't in tune with anything that was going on inside of me. And so I've really had to shift that and become in tune with these things, and to learn to purge the things in my body, but mainly in my soul and in my mind, that don't need to be there anymore. And by the way, I did a video on emotions, and basically one of the main points in that is that when you feel like you need to cry, cry. Your body is speaking to you through that urge to cry, that those tears need to come out now. It's time for that emotion to come out, or that grief to come out. Like when you have to go pee. You just go pee. You don't think about it. You don't resist it and say, I'm not going to go. Well, I feel bad. Well, am I going to disappoint God? You don't do all that. You just go. And that's how it is with emotions. It's like perspiration when you get sweaty and you're exercising. You don't analyze it. You don't resist it. You just do it. And so that's what you need to do with your emotions and with grieving, is let them out. I have been to, probably several therapists over the years, not any one for very long. There was a male therapist I went to. I think I went to him maybe 5 times or 6 times, and then he went to go do some other job. But and then you can also go to groups. I haven't really been to any groups. I've led groups. I did go through Living Waters once, and I think I went through Cross Current once. This was years ago, back in probably 2004. But groups are always good if you can't afford $150 an hour therapist. You can go to a group, or you can start your own group to process things that have happened to you. I do have a very clean diet. That has helped. I have done a lot of fasting in the past. I've done a lot of fasting, some intermittent, and then one time I went on an 8-day fast where I had nothing but water and these little green tablets. I think they were like barley and spirulina, and it was the Vitratox, Vitratox, fast cleanse. And I took this bentonite, this big jar of bentonite, alternated that with the little green pills for 8 days. And they said on the third day, this was a long time ago, this was probably back in maybe 2000, 2001 or so. And they said the third day is going to let you know how toxic you are by the symptoms you have. Y'all, I was dizzy. I was so dizzy I couldn't stand up. I was leaning over the toilet, just sweating and salivating, about to throw up, even though I never did. I was very, very sick. And that was the first real fast I did. The Lord led me to do that, to kind of push over the threshold and start a new thing. I do exercise. I do worship a lot in my spirit, in my physical self, in my life. I have a life of worship, and I know that has healed me a lot. I do a lot of dancing. Worship can lead to dancing, but I've danced a lot in my life. I always took ballet my whole childhood up till I was a teenager. I did competitive ice skating. I went to the regionals and won a few trophies. I did a lot of jazz, a lot of modern dance. I did water ballet. All of those are kinds of dancing. I always listened to music. Music is one thing I attached to when I was little, when I didn't attach to my parents. And I think I attached to the music in multiple levels. I attached to the artists who were singing. I remember praying one time to be black because I loved the black singers. I thought they were so soulful and sweet, and I just wanted to be black. And I prayed, please let me be black. I think I was 6 years old. Anyway, so basically the point is with all this, you want to be, like I said before, releasing the old, receiving the new. Purge out the old leaven, the scripture says, and bring in the new leaven. Okay? This is going to be your whole life. Even if you haven't been through much trauma, especially if you have been through complex trauma. And as you know, complex trauma is not just one thing that happens to you. It's something that happens over and over and over and over again. And it can be one complex trauma, one theme, or 20 themes of complex trauma throughout your life. And so depending on the level and the duration and how many layers it is, that's how much healing proportionally you're going to need to do to come out of it. And believe me, I have healed so much, y'all. You can have as much healing as you want. It all depends on what are you willing to do to get it. If you have problems inside you, there's no reason to blame anybody else, because even though they did something to you that you didn't deserve and that you wish you didn't have, the injury and the problem and the symptom is happening inside you. And you're the one that has authority to do something about it. So you can go get as much healing as you want. Another major goal in healing is to reconnect with all of yourself. In complex trauma, we detach and we dissociate from ourselves to survive. Well, it's time in your healing, at the right time, it will be time for you to go and reconnect with all of yourself, one piece at a time. One piece at a time. Okay, this portrait here was recently brought over. My parents were moving into a retirement home, and they brought over some things, and that portrait was one of them, and I didn't like that picture. There was too much trauma associated with that picture to me, and I was going to bring it in and put it in my closet. And Tom said, no, you should hang it up in your office. And I thought, there's no way that's going to happen. So I tried to slip it in beside my bench there. And the Lord said, no, don't do that. Pull it out and prop it on the floor and sit cross-legged in front of that portrait for 3 days. Not all day every day, but a couple of hours each day, and get to know that little girl. And that's you. That's what he was telling me. That's you, a part of you that you've blocked out, and you need to reconnect with this part of you. So reconnecting with the parts of you that you have disconnected from is a big part of healing. And also doing what the Lord tells you to do is very important. He's told me to make these YouTube videos, and it is a gift He has given me for many reasons. But as I have done these videos, it has been part of my healing because I'm sharing my testimony and I'm doing what He has told me to do. And He always blesses you when you listen and follow and you do what He tells you to do. He blesses you exponentially. So you're moving from being abused in so many ways, and you're doing just the opposite now. You've moved over to self-care. You're the only one who's going to be able to take care of yourself. And so you need to start doing that actively every day. What can I do to care for myself today? What can I say no to that I don't need to be doing so that I can take care of myself? Also, learning new skills is important in this, because in learning new skills, you're going to learn to purge the bad, receive the good. You're going to learn boundaries. You're going to learn skills of how healthy people operate. You're going to be more attracted to them, and then you're going to start doing those things, and it's going to help you move in that direction. You're going to get a new perspective of how your life can be and how it will become. You are going to learn to spend time with those people who love you and who appreciate you and who make you feel visible and cared for and like you're valuable to them. And it may take you a while to believe that that's really true, but when you hang around these type people, it helps your brain to heal, because little children who have someone in their life who's just crazy about them, one of their parents or a sibling or a neighbor or an uncle, a teacher who's just crazy about them, they grow up with really healthy brains. And so that tells us that that is what we need to have a healthy brain. And that lets us know too that that's how God feels about us. He's very excited about us. And then also, as you heal whatever's happening in your life, you will deal with whatever the current issue is. If you have a marital problem or a work problem at work or a problem with yourself or whatever's going on, you will just deal with the problem that's happening, but you will also be looking behind the curtain to see what's driving this behavior. Where is this coming from? How am I in the current situation? How am I acting out of the baggage? How is that different from me acting out of the current circumstance? And the current circumstance will be like the fire that's going on. But the baggage will be like the gasoline that's on the fire that will be making it much worse than it really is. And once you deal with the baggage, then the current circumstance will be able to be seen in perspective as it really is. Okay, so I hope something I've said has been helpful. This is part 2 of complex trauma, and I've tried to give a lot of personal examples, as many as I could think of right now. I'm sure I'll think of more later. But you want to eliminate the toxins in your life, the toxic personalities, the toxic experiences, the toxic food, the toxic water, toxic patterns. You want to pour out the old. You want to purge out your bad traumas, emotions in appropriate, helpful ways. You want to gravitate towards safe people, and you want to start bringing the good in. The more you bring the good in and let the bad out, the more you'll be filled up on the good, and the bad will be outside of you. Because when you start, most of the bad is inside you and the good is outside of you. So that's why you want to bring in the good and let out the bad, to change from having the bad inside and the good outside to having the good inside and the bad outside. That's the ultimate goal. Also remember that the Lord saw everything and knows all about everything that has happened to you, and He understands and He cares very much about that, and He wants to help you and to heal you and to be your wonderful counselor and great physician in your healing. Don't ever leave Him out of anything, especially healing. Definitely want to reconnect with all of yourself and learn new skills, new perspectives. And remember that you want to hang around and be around people that really appreciate you and that see the best in you and that are on your side in your healing. Okay? So I hope this is helpful. And this is part 2 of complex trauma. And so I'll see you guys next time.